Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Delon D'Souza. Coming up on the show this week, the legal back and forth between the Biden administration and Texas continues. The Justice Department once again urging courts to step in and suspend a new Texas law which bans most abortions. A state of exception declared in two regions in Chile after clashes broke out between security forces and the indigenous Mapuche people. And the latest Superman comes out as bisexual, the announcement from DC Comics made on National Coming Out Day. But first, the Biden administration is once again urging courts to step in and suspend a new Texas law which bans most abortions. This latest wrangling comes after an appeals court reinstated the law after a brief 48-hour window. The legal showdown between the state of Texas and the Biden administration is likely to wind up in the Supreme Court.
First it was halted, then suddenly reinstated again. Confusion has surrounded Texas's 6-week abortion ban in recent days. While the state holds its breath, residents remain divided.
Abortion is a murder, and it's up against the Lord.
I think that all women should have the right to choose what they would like to do with their bodies.
On the 1st of September, the Texas law came into effect. It bans abortions once a heartbeat is detected, which usually happens at 6 weeks.
My body! My body!
The legislation sparked global outrage, with thousands taking to the streets across the US. Days after the text came into effect, the Biden administration sued Texas, saying the law is unconstitutional. The Justice Department argued that the legislation effectively overturns the Roe v. Wade landmark ruling, which legalized abortion, stating it is a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution.
SB 8 bans nearly all abortions in the state after 6 weeks of pregnancy, before many women even know they are pregnant, and months before a pregnancy is viable. It does so even in cases of rape, sexual abuse, or incest. Texas does not dispute that its statute violates Supreme Court precedent.
Nearly a month after the Justice Department's lawsuit was filed, U.S. District Court Judge Robert Pittman blocked the law. But 48 hours later, the legislation was revived once again, this after Texas secured a temporary hold on the federal judge's ban. As the state awaits the court's decision, the fate of millions of women continues to hang in the balance, but the ban's effect is already being felt.
It's really hard now to get an appointment out of state because Texas women have been flooding the system.
The current legal struggle is likely to end in the Supreme Court, but pro-choice activists are not optimistic. Last month, the US's highest court rejected a request from abortion clinics to block the ban.
Now, as the NBA gears up for a new season next week, unvaccinated players will have to comply with a long list of restrictions to play in the games. According to U.S. media reports, nearly 95% of players have been vaccinated. Basketball legend Michael Jordan has even endorsed the NBA's tough stance, hoping to nudge more players to get the shot. Peter O'Brien reports.
For now, it seems the Brooklyn Nets will be without star player Kyrie Irving for home games this season. How many he'll miss depends on whether he'll eventually get the jab.
I think we recognise he's not playing home games, so we're going to have to, for sure, play without him this year. So it just depends on when, where and how much.
Honestly, I like to keep that stuff private, man.
A New York City mandate means Irving can't play in home games or against the New York Knicks as long as he remains unvaccinated. For each game he misses, he'll take a pay cut of around $380,000. If he were to miss all of his home games, he could lose more than $15 million. And he's not the only one who could be missing out. Washington Wizards ace Bradley Beal remains hesitant.
It is a personal decision between every individual. That's it. Right? And I have that personal right to keep it to myself and keep it between my family. And I would like everybody to respect that.
Washington, D.C. doesn't have the same restrictions, so Beal can still play every game there if he doesn't get the jab. The NBA doesn't require players to be vaccinated, but those who aren't face frequent testing and restrictions on activities like practice. This has pushed more than 95% of NBA players to get at least one shot. The most likely cause for the holdouts, misinformation spreading across NBA locker rooms and group chats. This is despite some athletes reporting lingering muscle and respiratory issues after having COVID-19. Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics, for instance, needed an inhaler before games long after he recovered.
The grit and the glory.
The women's NBA has been more successful than any other professional sports league in North America at getting players jabbed, at almost 100% inoculation. This is thanks to an outreach campaign by the Players Association, which began even before vaccines were authorized.
Now, construction has begun on what's been billed as the world's first pandemic-ready skyscraper in Miami. The 55-story Legacy Tower will cost $500 million, and it's expected to contain apartments, hotel rooms, and 10 floors of medical facilities.
The Legacy Tower will be part of a new complex called Miami World Center. Development began during the pandemic. Construction is underway. Developers say the tower will be COVID conscious and pandemic ready, a world first.
Since the project has a residential, hotel, and medical wellness component to it, we decided to expand some of the wellness features throughout the rest of the project. We looked at antimicrobial material throughout. We looked at Xenix robots. These are robots that kill bacteria that we could use for cleanliness.
The Legacy Tower will have 310 luxury residences, 219 hotel rooms, and 10 floors of medical facilities.
From the minute you come into the elevators, your touchless technology, you have an air purification system, you have the ability to have a medical center right there. So if anything happens to you, you can just go down your elevator and walk across the hall and basically say, can I get a checkup?
The COVID-conscious property project has attracted customers. The Legacy Tower's studios and 1- and 2-bedroom apartments are already sold out. The tower should be completed by 2024.
Chile's president has declared a state of exception in 2 southern regions. The move comes after clashes broke out between security forces and the indigenous Mapuche people. Now, the Mapuche had been demanding the restoration of their ancestral lands and self-determination, but with the lack of a solution, radical groups have carried out attacks.
After declaring a state of emergency, Chile will deploy its armed forces to 2 regions in the south of the country, Chilean President Sebastián Piñera announced Tuesday.
We want to inform all our citizens today that we have decided to decree a state of exception of constitutional emergency due to a serious alteration of public order. According to this emergency decree, the armed forces may provide logistical and technological support, and also surveillance, patrolling and transportation for all police procedures.
The deployment of troops will initially last 15 days, with the option to extend the measure later on. The decision comes after simmering tensions reached a head between security forces and the indigenous Mapuche population. On Sunday, 1 person died and 17 were injured at a pro-Mapuche rally as clashes broke out between riot police and protesters. The conflict between pro-indigenous groups and security forces has been brewing for nearly a decade. The Mapuche are Chile's largest indigenous group with over 1.7 million people, but have suffered centuries of marginalization and discrimination. They're demanding the return of their ancestral lands that were taken in a series of military operations in the late 19th century. The president's announcement came on Columbus Day, a controversial holiday that marks the discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus. But many indigenous people view it as a day that glorifies the colonization and genocide of their communities.
Now, Monday, October 11th, was National Coming Out Day, a day to support lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in coming out. Well, to mark the occasion, DC Comics unveiled that the new Superman, the son of Clark Kent and Lois Lane, is bisexual. The new edition, which hits the stands next month, has so far had positive reviews.
Is it a bird? A plane? No, it's the first bisexual Superman. DC Comics' new adventures follow John Kent, the son of Superman and Lois Lane. Like his father, Kent also falls for a reporter, this time a male friend named Jay Nakamura. They'll share a kiss in issue 5. Superman writer Tom Taylor said he didn't want this to become a missed opportunity.
Yeah, look, it's not a gimmick. We didn't want this to be DC Comics creates new queer Superman. We want this to be Superman finds himself, becomes Superman, and then comes out. And I think there's a really important distinction there.
The news took social media by storm. Many, like actor Anthony Rapp, applauding the decision.
I've been a comic book geek since pretty much the time I could first read. This news about Superman makes my queer heart glad, knowing the positive impact it will have on so many young folks today and in the future.
Superman first appeared in comics in 1938, and he's arguably America's most famous superhero. Now his son is breaking new ground, and not just with his sexuality. John Kent fights climate change, tackles social justice issues, and is on the front lines of the refugee crisis. It's part of DC Comics' efforts to have their characters reflect today's world.
That's it for this edition of Inside the Americas. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.
In Iraq, the militias reign supreme. The war against the Islamic State organization has only strengthened their power.
أولاً ومن ثم أن تتحرك خارج نطاق الدولة.
كل أقوى الميليشيات على البلاد كلها.
Since 2019, they are accused of stifling the October Revolution, which swept through Baghdad and the south.
600 morts, 21 000 blessés.
Fear pervades the movement as the leaders of the protests are assassinated one by one.
يعني صعب أذكر اسمها لأنه بالأخير حياتي تنتهي خلاص.
البصرة لا حياة فقط موت.
Reporters Plus, Iraq, a revolution murdered, on France 24 and France24.com.